Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, all of you, for coming this afternoon / this evening for us, for Alastair, very much midday, calling in all the way from Cayman Islands. My name's Thomas Hood. I'm the chair of Neurodiversity in Law, and this is our second coffee talks. We had one earlier. And Neurodiversity in Law's Coffee Talks are a series of events where we interview barristers, solicitors, and other legal professionals on their experiences of being neurodivergent. Just so you are all aware, this event is being recorded. So if you would like to not be visible or don't want to be audible, then just please have your cameras off and your microphones muted. Other than that, just thought I should let you know. If you want to put questions to our panelists, do by all means turn on your camera and make yourself heard. Otherwise, pop a message in the chat publicly or privately to me, and I will put it to our panel. Now, to tell you a little bit about what the Coffee Talks is as an event, it's there to raise awareness about the existence of neurodivergent professionals in law, discuss the obstacles that neurodivergent individuals face when accessing a career in law, and foster the inclusivity of neurodivergent individuals in the legal profession. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome, firstly, Daryna Plysak. So Daryna is a trainee solicitor at Irwin Mitchell. She completed her LLB and LPC before working as a paralegal at several top firms, and she was diagnosed with dyslexia at age 9. Thank you very much for being here.
You're welcome. Nice to be here.
And I'm also very happy to introduce Alastair David. He is an attorney practicing immigration and employment law in the Cayman Islands. Before becoming an attorney, Alastair practiced as a barrister in England and Wales for over a decade, taking on asylum and immigration cases. Alastair was diagnosed with dyslexia aged 10. Thank you very much for being here, Alastair.
Thank you very much, Thomas.
Now, I'll get the ball rolling before we open to the floor for questions, but could you just tell us both a little bit about how you got to where you are today, sort of your summary of your career in a sort of brief couple of sentences?
Ladies first.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess my career has been quite traditional in a way. So I studied law at University of Liverpool. After that, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, the type of law firm, the type of training contract. So I paralegaled for 2 years, and that really helped me to kind of understand what I like and what I definitely don't like about, you know, kind of the work or the firm. And then I decided I need to get my LPC done. So I studied LPC and my master's in Manchester University of Law. At that point, Irwin Mitchell came to do a presentation, and that was my first time that I met them and kind of spoke to a few trainees and built that relationship with them. And then decided to apply for a vacation scheme and a training contract, but successful at that. And then because I had 2 years to wait before I started my training contract, I paralegaled for 2 years, which was really good because then it didn't seem as sort of scary to start a training contract without knowing anyone. So it was quite good because I could already, you know, I knew people, I knew the case systems and business in general. So and now I'm in my second year of training contract. So kind of that's my journey in the brief.
So my dad's a solicitor in South Wales. So I basically was an office junior in his firm for the age of 13 till 18. So I had an idea of what a small high street firm does. Then did a history degree because I couldn't stand law and equity and trusts in particular. I thought, God, I wouldn't want to do that for 3 years. Finished my history degree in Hull and then didn't know what I was going to do. So I thought I'd do the GDL, did that. And then I thought, well, being a barrister seems all right. So applied for to become a barrister, did the GDL in London in Store Street. And then I was very lucky to get a pupillage after about having a months in at the start of the course. And then so I started pupillage in 2005 in Cardiff in 30 Park Place. Then moved to chambers in Swansea called Pendragon for my third six, and then was there until 2010. 2010 to 15 or 16 I was in Leicester in 2 chambers. First of all, King Street, which collapsed within about a year of me being there, which was kind of scary. Then I moved to Newark, and then my best mate in Leicester moved out to the Cayman Islands, and I said to him, jokingly, if there's any jobs out there for an immigration or employment barrister, let me know. And then a month of that conversation, I had a telephone call saying, would you like to interview for a job out here? And moved out in 2016 in May, and have loved it ever since.
Brilliant. That's really, it's fascinating to sort of hear you both have very sort of varied experiences of getting to where you are today. I mean, particularly Daryna, with your sort of paralegal experience and sort of filling up that time before training contract, and with you, Alastair, sort of going from place to place and finding yourself now in a completely different part of the world. But sort of in those experiences, in taking those steps to where you are today, did you ever feel any resistance because of your diagnoses, because of your neurodiversities?
I think for me, it wasn't necessarily a resistance, but it was more of a personal resistance, in that because I wasn't seeing anyone else, any neurodiversity or disability in a law, when I went to any open events or any sort of law fairs, I sort of questioned for quite a long time whether it is a career for me, because you know, you do compare yourself against other kind of students and other people who are going into it, and you do think whether there's, you know, you're ever going to reach you know, training contract stage and solicitor or barrister, wherever it is, because you sort of compare yourself all the time, so your confidence and you've got that down. So I think that was more of that, rather than someone saying to me, you can't do this. And so I think as I progressed, and in my current kind of firm, that sort of been changed and questioned, because I had to question myself whenever I had someone who was kind of, and you think, okay, maybe it isn't. But even up to sort of even after I got a training contract, I still sort of was questioning, can I even do this? Because I wasn't seeing many people with, you know, any neurodiversity. And so I think that was, for me, that's kind of felt.
Sometimes your own nervousness more than anything else, because certainly when you become a barrister, it's the interviews, and if you're dyslexic like I am, that's a paper issue. Certainly the chambers which I got pupillage in 30 Park Place, you didn't have to do any written work beforehand. That might have changed now, I don't know. But then when we did and I was sitting on a pupillage committee in Leicester, in New York, and I don't think that there was any written kind of drafting or pleadings or anything along those lines. It was mainly done on the interview. So the speaking problem has never been an issue for me. It's always been the putting the pen to paper, and then you get a feedback. You send something in a hurry and you haven't spell checked it properly or something along those lines, and then someone goes, well, that's not really good enough, and then you go, oh, I'm terribly sorry, you know, I'm dyslexic, I didn't see this, I wanted to get it out to you before the end of the day. And oh, right, that's fine, that's not an issue. But you do feel embarrassed. I think that's the best way to put it. You know, I've got currently issues with my my work email, and it doesn't pick up for some reason spelling mistakes, because, you know, I'm sending out these emails and they look like idiot. You know, it genuinely looks unprofessional, and people are writing back to me saying, what's going on? And I'm going, I'm terribly sorry, this is the situation. And they go, oh, that's okay. But as a barrister, I'd be definitely more concerned as a barrister, because you're selling yourself and you're projecting yourself as a person who's competent, and you're self-employed, and therefore they want to have utmost trust in you. And if you can't spell fallacy, for instance, I had to use my phone today to work out how to spell fallacy. I typed it in about 6 or 7 times and I couldn't work it out. Just couldn't put it down on paper. And if I'd sent that off to a client here, then they would have been all right. Okay, but HSM are good, so therefore we trust him. But if that was a barrister in the UK and they didn't know me from Adam, then I think that would have been a concern to me. So it's more of your own, I think, self-confidence and being able to speak to your clients or people and say, I'm terribly sorry, you know, this is the circumstances, you know, there is going to be spelling mistakes, but everything else will be done okay.
I was just going to say, I think it was similar for me as well, in terms of when it was just an interview, then that's fine. I'm completely kind of confident to talk about that. But when it came to the written work, there's always a bit of panic. And it might be that my work might be very similar to anyone else, and, you know, there might be a small issue or whatever. But I always used to sort of think that it's bigger than it is in a way as well. And I think my kind of concern was as well, with written work, the psychometric tests that a lot of firms kind of do. Luckily, the firm that I'm with didn't do that, and they kind of got a blind screening and everything like that when it comes to grades or kind of people's background and stuff like that. But psychometric tests, I think, can be such a limitation to people who do have dyslexia. Like that's what I found, because it's almost testing something that I'm not good at, you know, the way you kind of process information, and I think that's kind of just made me kind of think about it when we were just discussing about interviews and kind of, you know, the written aspects of it that Alastair was saying.
No, absolutely. I mean, I guess that even though you've had these stigmas and this sort of self-realization, sort of self-awareness that I think we all have, with sort of things that we first perceive as barriers to us having success, haven't, I guess, in the end, caused you the problems you may have anticipated them having. But just sort of an extension before I'd love to turn to the floor. So if anyone has any questions, do make yourself known, either by texting through the chat or also use the reactions, because I'm keeping my eye on the screen. But sort of what made you think at this stage now, why get in touch with us? Why sort of make your voices heard? What sort of spurned that on as such?
I think for me, I was in two minds whether to do it, even after I signed up to neurodiversity in law, because I was still sort of thinking, why did I sign up to this? You know, because I was sort of worried that now I do have to sort of come clean and somehow admit to the world that I have dyslexia, as if it's some sort of stigma. And I think when I started to question it, I thought, well, it isn't, but the fact that I'm thinking that way probably means that others feel that way also. And something great actually happened after I did the article for neurodiversity in law. People within my own firm and other people who I don't know just got in touch with me via LinkedIn and started to just kind of ask me questions and just say that it was, you know, great that I spoke out, and actually they've got dyslexia or dyspraxia and they're not sure about whether they can do this, you know, whether they can get into law and things like that. And they spoke about some of the barriers. And I think that was just amazing. That, you know, I thought even if one person kind of thinks that way, they'll be great, but actually the response has been great. And also from kind of like the leadership as well, people were saying, well, yeah, I mean, I've got dyspraxia, but I think it is about speaking up, and everyone is saying that it's not a stigma, it's not anything to be ashamed of or worried. It just means that we process information differently. And I think and often people forget actually how beneficial it is to have dyslexia. You know, I don't know whether I would be where I am if I didn't have dyslexia or be involved in the things I've been involved with. And I think if we can speak a bit more about that, then hopefully people won't feel like it is something to be afraid of or ashamed, because actually you've got, you know, I know it's cliche, superpower, but in a way that it is a bit of a superpower, because, you know, I've been able to get involved with innovation forum in my company where we discuss kind of moving forward 10 years plans about strategy and technology. And that's because I really enjoy looking at a big picture and strategy, and maybe I wouldn't have that if I didn't have dyslexia. So yeah, my reason for speaking out was to get everyone else to see that it's not anything to worry about, and anyone can get into law, and it doesn't matter what sort of neurodiversity that you have.
Very, very similar for me. I think a lot of the time you put barriers up in front of yourself, which you think, oh, because I'm dyslexic, I can't do this. And you know, I don't know what the majority of the people are, if they're dyslexic, dyspraxic, or some other something else. But certainly, you know, for a dyslexic, you know, we've all been there at like the age of 7 or 8 crying because we can't spell sort and stuff like that. And we've got through it because, you know, we've all been bottom of the class of the spelling tests. And it gives you that you know, you get through it. If you get the law degree, if you get a degree and you've got spelling issues, it shows that you've got a degree of confidence in yourself, or a degree of maybe stubbornness to get where you're wanting to go. And you shouldn't say to yourself, well, I've got 50% of the way here now, I'm not going to take that final step because I don't believe in myself. And I think that's what I was really trying to push across, is the fact is that, you know, okay, we have our problems. We can't hide from those problems, but to get where we've got to is something to be bloody proud about, to be perfectly honest with you. You know, you should be proud that if you got to a degree, you've got, you know, all these things. And, you know, yes, as you know, you're saying it is we think differently, and that gives us a unique perspective on the world. And as a father, and I've got 2 kids, and my son at the moment is doing his spelling tests, And, you know, he gets his B's and D's wrong and he's getting his S's wrong. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, God, is he going to be dyslexic like my wife is dyslexic as well? But he's still actually getting stubborn enough to get 7 out of 8 or 8 out of 8. So maybe he isn't dyslexic. Maybe he is, but maybe he's just a determined little bugger. But if he is, you know, whatever, you know, we are where we are. Okay, you should be proud of it. And I think that that's something that we need to really stick out. And maybe that I should have put that down in my CV more. Maybe I should have, and that's, you know, I'm thinking a degree of guilt, maybe, because I didn't put down that I was dyslexic in my CV, and maybe I should have done that as a way of saying, well, I'm not ashamed of this, and if you are prejudiced against me, that's your own issue more than anything else.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. What I'm going to do, now that I can see there are some faces on screen, is I'm going to turn to our lovely guests who are here. And I'm going to turn to Ben first. I think Ben has a question directly for Alastair.
Hello all.
Hello, Ben.
Hope you're enjoying this nice evening. My question for you, Alastair, is that as someone who lives in the South Wales area and wants to practice as a barrister in the South Wales area, did you find there was any stigma within the barrister community against your neural issue?
No, funnily enough, the only issue that ever became apparent to me was when I got pulled up in court by the Old Recorder of Swansea for spelling sort wrong. And it was one of the most inappropriate things this judge could have done, because I was representing a child with severe learning difficulties. His IQ was 71. And I think I spelt sort, S-O-R-T, as opposed to S-O-U-G-H-T. And bearing in mind, I just run an abuse of process argument to get this case kicked out because he didn't have the intellectual ability to function in the court. And the judge was there criticising my spelling. And I thought, well, okay. And I said, oh, I'm terribly sorry, I'm dyslexic. And he just, it's the only time I think he's ever kind of backed down quite in the way he did, because he was quite a forceful character. But when I was in chambers, no, that was never an issue. Or at least it's not apparent that it's an issue. And that's, again, when you're a barrister, if you do an advice and then they go, oh, thank you very much, and you never hear from them again, you don't know if it's because they disagreed with you on law, or if it's because you spelt sort wrong, or if they didn't like your heading, or things along those lines. That's one of the unique things about being a barrister, is because you are self-employed and you don't really get the feedback from solicitors. But funny enough, I did a lot of work with Irwin Mitchell, and I was constantly doing, I don't know if you're involved with the employment team, but I was involved with the employment team a lot. So I used to do these kind of merits assessments for the employment team. And occasionally I'd get an email going, yeah, Alastair, you need to have a look at that one again. I'm terribly sorry. It's at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I'll have a quick review of that one. So, you know, I built up a relationship with Irwin Mitchell, and they could clearly understand that there were some issues there, and they never held that against me. So I wonder sometimes if it's the bigger firms understand things better, diversity, disability in general. You know, the smaller high street firms, maybe it's slightly different. Certainly I think my dad's firm, well, my dad's dyslexic, so he should understand it, but he's retired now. But you wonder sometimes, people of my dad's ilk, if they really kind of completely got the whole diversity issue. I'm sure my dad might be slightly upset with me saying that. He's a wonderful man generally.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ben, for your question. I'm going to turn to Sophie or Samantha. If either of you would like to ask a question, by all means, unmute yourself and ask it to our lovely guests. If either of you do, if not.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. Thank you both for being here today. Yeah, no, I really do resonate with the almost sort of imposter syndrome. I graduated from the University of Sheffield with a law degree in 2014, and then since then I've been working as a paralegal. So I currently work at Pinsent Masons in the IP department, and I'm trying to sort of crack into becoming a solicitor, getting the training contract, and it is really difficult. I have dyslexia. I was actually diagnosed in my second year at university, so quite late on. I was just sort of wondering if you had any, advice around coping mechanisms. I mean, I totally understand about the psychometric testing. I really struggle with that, and it almost annoys me when I really want to apply to a law firm, but I find that they do the Watson-Glacier test, and I'm just like, well, there's just no point in me wasting my time doing it, because I probably aren't going to progress past that level. So yeah, no, if you sort of had any tips around that and breaking into the training contract, I know it's a bit of a pot of gold.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think from my perspective, I think it's finding what, if there's particular things that you sort of struggle with, finding a way to cope with that. So one is obviously find if there is software that you can get, like I know, there's Gotti, Grammarly, different types, which do pick up on some sort of spellings that you might be doing quite often, then I would make sure you use that. That really helped me when I was doing my LPC and things like that. Obviously, when working, I'm limited to the systems I can use to make sure that applying data is protected. But again, you can still get your firm to put that in place, and it is something that I've got. And it just helps, like, if I question myself, did I put everything right, then I can just run it past it. So that's one of my things that I was kind of using to help me. But I think it's really important finding a firm that is really suitable for you, because I think for me, speaking to trainees and understanding what is the recruitment process and help me to determine, what company I kind of would like to apply to as well. And there are some that I did consider, but actually, again, when I looked at the type of assessments they will be doing on me, it just didn't feel right for me, because I knew that that's not going to show my strengths. That's only going to show up my weaknesses, doing a psychometric test, doing some sort of spelling or short-term memory test, that isn't kind of what a solicitor will be doing day to day. You're there to listen to the client, communicate, provide them strategy of how they can kind of resolve their issue, give them options of how that can be resolved. So it isn't, no one's going to say to you, can you spell this to me? That's never going to, that's never going to be an issue. And I think it is important to see what are the values of the firm, and are they actually living by those values? Are they actually putting things in place to make sure that people have support? One of the things that kind of was started up quite recently in my firm is a group called I'm Able, and it's kind of basically anyone who wants to join can join, but there are a number of people who've got different disabilities, and basically we discuss things that we as a firm can be doing better, to make sure that everyone kind of fits in and no one feels that, they're struggling or anything like that. So I think it's finding a firm that is right for you, and that is not going to discriminate you by the way they kind of assess you or by the way they kind of give you work or anything like that. And that would be my advice, to really kind of understand, maybe speak to kind of trainees, speak to the people who work there to understand if they are true to what they're saying, because all the firms will say, we care about everyone, we will not discriminate, we're very supportive, but I think it's finding out if in real life that actually happens. So, going to different events and actually speaking to real human beings, you can gather whether that's the case and if that is the firm for you.
That's really helpful, thank you. Yeah, it sort of feels like every single firm that sponsors you for your LPC, they want you to do the psychometric testing, which is just really annoying. I hate it so much.
I just find that so disappointing that that's a problem for you. I'd be tempted to write to I'd send an email to their partner saying, who's your equalities manager? And then send them an email saying, look, I'd love to apply for you guys, but you're asking me to do something which isn't going to show me this. I'm not going to be able to do these tests. Look at my A levels, look at my degree. Okay, fair enough. You can see how good I am on paper, but you're asking me to do a psychometric testing, which is, you wouldn't ask a disabled person to walk up the stairs. You've got to make reasonable adjustments for me, guys. My wife came across something similar. My wife is from Hong Kong, and she did a second degree. She went to do medicine, and she applied for Cardiff University. And they saw that she was from Hong Kong, so they said you have to have at least a B at English A level. A GCSE English. The fact is, my wife had done a degree beforehand in the UK, and I was like, why the hell do you have that requirement? And it just so happened that we didn't apply there. But as an attorney, a barrister as I was then, and you're thinking about the Equality Act, and you're thinking, PCPs and things along those lines. And it struck me as like, you've got to make reasonable adjustments. You've got to be able to justify what you're doing. And if it's a situation where you're saying, well, you have to have a minimum of a B, and then you're going, but I've already got a degree, I can write English. This isn't the case of me not being able to write English or the intelligence to get a degree in a certain subject. So, and you'll tend to find that a lot of the time people are so concerned about being regarded as discriminatory that if you wrote to someone and said, look, this is the circumstances, I've got an issue with this. Is there anything any adjustments you could make? They might actually come back and say, oh yeah, we'll take that on board, or we will lower the grading or something along those lines, because, you know, a psychometric testing only proves so much.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah, and I think, I know it is hard, but don't sort of be off-put as well. It is, I think, if anything, neurodiversity can give you grit, and I think that is one of the most important things that you can have to in any field to success. You know, if you've got that, then you can kind of just keep going. I mean, obviously, I don't know whether Owen Mitchell's a firm for you, have you looked at it, but they don't actually do psychometric tests, and I do know that they sponsor LPC. So, you know, it's just, I'm sure there are other firms as well that do that. So just kind of try and sort of, maybe other firms that you looked at, maybe try and sort of look out the box and see, you know, what else is out there, because they've got to be the right employee for you. And if they're not right at the point of recruitment, then are they going to be right when you actually get there? I think, you know, that is really important, because it's not, I know everyone just keeps going on about just get a training contract, but it's not just that. You need to make sure that the firm is right for you, because actually 2 years can be, you know, really difficult if you're not suited to that firm. And I found that actually, you know, I did say so for example, when I had my assessment centre, I said I've got dyslexia before I had that, and so they said, what can we do to help you? So on the written part of the assessment, I was given a laptop, so I was in the room by myself without anyone distracting me. I could use spell checker. So, you know, like really simple things, but it was really helpful, and I got extra time when doing that assessment. And I think, you know, if it was a company that was making that difficult, then I would just thought, well, they're always going to be difficult. So I don't that's not what I want. So just try and, do a bit more research and see what firms kind of are willing to not discriminate at that early level, so that you can consider them a bit further.
And do you think Owen Mitchell's values are sort of reflected in their approach to that, you know, neurodiversity? Have you sort of had really positive experience with them so far, working for them?
Yeah, I think for me initially, I probably only disclosed the fact that I've got dyslexia to HR and my supervisor, and that was again because I was junior and I was worried whether I was going to be disadvantaged against other trainees or something. I think because I was comparing myself quite a lot. But then actually I got a mentor who's really, really good, who's kind of quite senior in the firm. And when I said I've got dyslexia, their response wasn't sort of to pity me or say, oh, like, it'll be all right. It was sort of like, so, like, it doesn't matter. You know, you've demonstrated to me that you can do anything you put your mind to. So that's not an issue at all. And they've spoken to me about, it's something I kind of spoke at the interview as well. They spoke about a CEO who's got it, and it's just that people don't speak about it. But I bet there are people on the board of Owen Mitchell who've got a neurodiversity, but it's just that they think it's not important, so they might not speak about it. And so yeah, I've not experienced any difficulty. It was more from myself to compare myself to others and think, actually, oh, I've misspelled something, but actually other Chinese misspell things as well, and they don't have a dyslexia. Like, people misspell things all the time, so it's kind of trying not to concentrate on things that you might find difficult and think about actually what you're really good at, because those are the skills that will get you there.
Thank you both, that's really helpful. I'll let someone else speak now.
Thank you very much, Samantha. Just one point to build on what Daryna says. Was I right in catching that you're doing IP work with paralegals?
Yes, I'm a paralegal in St Mason's IP department.
Okay, because there's one resource that you can look at, just because I'm doing a master's currently in IP, okay. There's something called IP ability, which is a subsection of a wider group called IP Inclusive, and we're currently working with them to do a few things in the future with them as an organisation. But they have a charter that a number of intellectual property firms have signed up to. And will support diversity and equality movements. And so if you look at IP firms specifically that have signed up to that charter, then I think that should hopefully give you a good idea about firms that will support your situation.
Thank you.
And I think looking for things like that is quite helpful.
Definitely, thank you. Obviously St Mason's is amazing and really supportive, so I'll be definitely applying there. But yeah, it's interesting obviously to explore it elsewhere.
Oh yeah, you've got to see what's out there. It's the great joy of it, I think. Cool. Sophie, do you have a question? And then I'll turn to Arwen if you have one as well.
Sure, yeah. Thank you for giving your time this evening. I'm actually head of media and marketing at ND in Law, so coming from the organisation standpoint here. But I just had a question regarding overcoming this notion of the written advocate, and kind of especially in now we're in pupillage and training contract season, there is this emphasis on that written application. And there doesn't seem to be obviously any leniencies at all that exist at the moment on the form for reasonable adjustments of making them aware when they receive the application that you in fact are neurodivergent. I'm dyslexic, so my written advocacy is never as strong as my oral advocacy. And I just don't know if either of you, from either the barrister or the solicitor angle, can shed light on how you approach those applications and what you can perhaps do to try and overcome that almost fear in yourself, and fear that when they read it they're going to go, oh, your written advocacy is not as strong, which naturally it isn't.
Fear that things have moved on so much since I was applying for pupillage. I remember in 2004 I applied for pupillage and they had the portal system back then, and you had those are the chambers that were on the portal and those chambers that were off it. And I remember applying for 9. I think I had 9 choices, and the first one I applied for was in London, and they turned me down in 9 minutes of receiving the application. And I don't know if that was because of spelling mistakes or whatever, but I just went out to the pub after that and went and got drunk. But I think the problem, well, there's good things about and bad things about moving towards greater autonomy, computers and, standard forms and things along those lines. And if you don't come up necessarily where there's a box to tick if you've got a disability, then there's a problem. But I would often be tempted just to send an email to chambers. Again, chambers are normally really good at this. They normally have an understanding of the diversity issues, or if they don't, they should do. And even the smaller chambers, which I was always a member in, they were all pretty good. And if you sent a cover letter, if you can still do that, I guess it's, but I say, I'm, hearing about all these kind of training schemes, which I've read about and things along those lines, it must be so difficult to now get a job if you've got to go through all these training schemes, if you can't even get onto the training scheme to start off with. And I fear for people if that's a problem and they're being held back. And certainly I remember people who didn't get pupillage and then doing things like LPC and Kearns, and they would be doing LPC work for 2-3 years and constantly trying to apply for pupillage. And it so happens that one guy who I know in Leicester now, I was against him quite often because he was doing a certain stuff in LPC work and he applied to the chambers that I was in, and I could say, put in a good word for him. I couldn't sit on his meeting. So maybe that's one way to get around it. I don't know if, there's a couple of you who already done paralegal work and maybe there's a back door in that way, but I just feel it's such a shame if you're having to do a set way of getting a job and that's held you back. And I'm not necessarily sure what the answer to that is.
I was going to say, I mean, I've not really had to kind of do the advocacy bit with application for training contracts. The way kind of it worked for me was a form that I had to complete, and then from then on the next stage is kind of kicked in. I think again with the application I just spent quite a lot of, so I went against what everyone says apply to loads of firms, and I only applied to Owen Mitchell after paralegaling for quite a while and volunteering and things like that. And that was because I didn't really know what the right firm is. So when I actually found them, I knew that kind of, it just clicked and I knew this is the firm I want to train with. So then I've really put my all into that application, and then obviously ran it through like kind of spell checking, got people to read it. I also knew a few people on my LPC who had already got a training contract with the firm, so I kind of spoke to them and said, is there anything, what do you think, and just got that feedback, and that's what worked for me. But I know it might be sort of slightly different with the advocacy bit, but like Alastair said, I mean, maybe a way in would be to kind of just make them aware that you do have it, and maybe kind of approach them ahead of it and just to say like, look, I've got a dyslexia, and just so if there are any issues or you've got any questions, please let me know, but I just want to make you aware of it. Because it might be that when they they do realise that you've got it, there might be a bit more lenience on when they review your application, and it won't be as strict.
Thank you. It just, there's this box that's, you know, framed of any reasonable adjustments we can make for, I guess, interview phase is kind of where it's aimed at. You know, if you were taken for interview, what reasonable adjustments would you need? Which naturally dyslexics would. We'd need longer to read a exercise or something like that. But my barrier with that is, well, what about the written application that you guys read first in order to get to the interview? And I think that's where the issue, in essence, in applications for neurodivergence lie, because we don't always perform well in any form of written. It doesn't mean we can't, but it's harder for us to. And you almost want it reversed, in that you would like the interview prior to the written exercise, but there doesn't seem to be any scope to approach that at present.
I mean, I was just going to add, I think in a way that the way, like you said, you know, it'd be great to have an interview before the application. And I think the way you can do it in a less formal way is if you know somebody, like, it sounds like you're obviously applying for chambers and stuff like that, but if you do know people, then, you know, I think that's the best thing you can do. Like, speak to people, find out kind of what they're looking for. They can always mention your name to the person who's reviewing it. I mean, and I don't know whether this has actually happened or not, but when Erwin Mitchell came to do a presentation at University of Law, afterwards I spoke to the trainees that were there, and one of the trainees said, right, I'm going to pass your name to the grad team to look out for your application. Now, I don't know if that person actually did that or not, but you know, there is that scope, and who knows, maybe, you know, maybe that was it, which kind of helped me. So I think, you know, don't be afraid to use your kind of, you know, networks that you have, and because they can really help you, because then you can have that informal kind of chat. Maybe if you know someone who works at the chambers, ask them for a coffee, virtual coffee at the moment, obviously, but just things like that, you know, because I mean, that's what I did. I kind of found somebody that I met, and there was can I ask you further questions? Can we have a catch up? And I did. I had a coffee with them, found out more about the firm. I met somebody else for a coffee who also works at the firm, because all of those things not only help me with the application, but also to understand, is this the firm for me? So when I'm putting that application together, I know exactly that it's going to be genuine, and I'm not just sending out 50 same applications. You know, it is kind of the company. So try and kind of build on your network, because they can always kind of help you when you actually come to submit that paper application.
Certainly mini pupilages were always very helpful in the firms. I did a mini pupillage in the place that took me on for my first and second six. And I did a couple of others as well. So you got to meet people that way. So I think that was always very important. And certainly when I did, you know, when we were looking at people who'd interviewed or applied, and we were going through the sift as supporting, you know, people on one side or the other, that was always a case of, well, do we know this person? Because I think in particular, if you're in the outer London, it's a question of, well, are they going to stay here? What are their connections to Leicester, for instance, or to Swansea, or to South Wales? Do they really want to practice here, or are they going to disappear? Because, you know, you invest a lot when you're in a chambers, and you're all self-employed, and you want someone to stay for a while. You don't want them just to finish their chambers and go, right, that's it, the bright lights are calling me, I'm off to London or Manchester or wherever. So, you know, if you meet these people, and in a mini pupillage, you're there for a week, you get to meet lots of people, you know, you get to have a coffee with them, you know, occasionally go to the bar with them and things like that. So personal contact is often very important.
Brilliant. Thank you both very, very much. I'm going to turn to Arwen, who I believe has a question for you, or a point, if you'd like to.
Hi. Sorry, I kept having to go on and off because my dogs were going mad. So I don't have a question, it's more of a comment. Awesome advice for anyone, because I've been qualified for 18 years and I was an employment solicitor for 12. There is actually a case, and it's not going to, it will only apply to people if their neurodivergency does qualify as a disability, but disability discrimination, obviously you have reasonable adjustments, etc., etc. And frankly, any firms, and Alastair is completely right, I think that bigger firms are much better at this, But ironically, this was a public sector, it was government legal services, and Brooks is the case, I think. Yeah, I've just looked it up. It was about specifically psychometric testing and interviews. Okay, so anybody who's interested, particularly in psychometric testing and interviews, have a look at that case. It's actually about somebody who had been diagnosed with Asperger's, and it's a really helpful case. But any law firm or barrister chambers or anyone sort of worth their salt should, as soon as you say I have or I consider myself to have a disability, they should be on red alert. Okay, reasonable adjustments. And that case was about somebody who did say I need reasonable adjustments, and they said no, you're not going to have them. I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do about that. And they fell foul of that. So I just thought that might be helpful. I completely understand. I mean, I'm autistic, but I completely understand psychometric testing is absolutely not for everyone. I really struggle with multiple choice questions where I'm like, well, really depends what you mean. So yeah, I struggle with that. But I just thought that it might be helpful for you guys to just know that is a thing. I mean, even if you sort of think, well, I'm not sure if I would actually qualify under the Equality Act as having a disability, they should still be wary enough of it to essentially help you sort of get through that. And it's the same goes for other things. I don't know, I'm old, but when I was applying for training contracts back in, I don't know, 90s, we had to do like group testing, like group exercises and things like that. And I mean, I must have done okay. First of all, I didn't know I was autistic. And second of all, I got a training contract with a really good national firm. But I did find those quite difficult. So yeah, there's all sorts of different things. It is hard out there. I know it's really, really difficult, both for training contracts and for pupilages. And but I also firmly believe that things like neurodiversity in law, people like those of us who are prepared to put our heads above the parapet and say, actually, you know what, we are neurodivergent, we have successful careers, we're doing well, you can do this. The more and more that happens, the better and the more informed everyone else is going to be. So yeah, here's to the future, really. But don't be afraid to have a look at that case. It's quite a useful one.
There's also another case involving a police officer and extra time. I can't remember the name of that case off the top of my head. That's the first time that I ever saw it in an employment context. He wasn't given extra time and he was dyslexic, and they found that dyslexia was a disability in his case.
I'll mute myself and have a look.
Yeah, it definitely can be. And I think certainly because the chambers are so nervous about ending up in an employment tribunal, anything along those lines, if you said, this is the situation, I imagine they will automatically, and they're full of lawyers, the last thing that lawyers want to do is be sued, because we spend enough time of it doing it for other people. To get involved personally and be personally liable, you're just not going to want to do that. So yeah, I would hope that they would make reasonable adjustments. Hope is probably the appropriate word.
Just to jump in there, it almost seems that the main issue is getting people just to put it on their forms in an open manner to start off with, and then once they know, it will just be almost okay from there. And it's just tackling that, and having discussions like this are so important for them.
Definitely, I don't know, the chambers that I was in, you could see the names of the people who'd applied. It wasn't blind applications and stuff along those lines. And if you've got a name, in Leicester, it's a very multi-diverse situation. And the chambers I was in, I was constantly pushing. I was saying, look, guys, 40% of our clients are Asian. We need to have some more Asian attorneys here or Asian barristers. This is getting a bit silly. And they were always taking that on board. If your name is, you have an Asian name, you wouldn't hide that, would you? In Leicester, it certainly would be an advantage, I'd have thought, potentially. So I don't, and I have to accept, I didn't say that I was dyslexic in my most recent job application for the job that I currently have. And it came out within about a month of being here. Oh, you're dyslexic, aren't you? Why did I take that off? You know, it was on my original form that I find, my original CV, and then I took it off. And I can't understand now the rationality behind doing it. It was like, oh, well, maybe they'll never find out. Of course they're going to find out when they read it, an email that I haven't spell checked. You know, it's going to be as obvious as the nose is on my face. You know, you can't hide from it. So you should, you know, you shouldn't, you know, be hiding it, I suppose. You should be making it quite clear. And if woe betide anyone who goes, well, I'm not going to give you the job because you're dyslexic, you go, fantastic. I'll see you in the employment tribunal in 6 months' time, and we can see what the employment tribunal think of that attitude. We have our skills, we have our benefits. I think we need to be far more positive about where we are.
I've just put the case. I've just put the case in the chat there for anyone who wants it. I think I completely agree. I can also understand, Alastair, why you did hide it, and I would also say that you don't have to disclose anything you don't want to disclose at all. You can get through the interview, you can get through everything, you can get offered a job, and then you can disclose it. And the fact is that there is a lot of stigma out there. I know that, you know, I practiced employment law for a long time. I don't anymore. But the only reason that I am out is because I work for the CPS as a senior Crown prosecutor, and I love it. I'm good at my job, and they are fantastic, and they are happy for me to come and talk to you guys, for example. In a commercial setting, I didn't necessarily have that experience, you know, so it's the other flip side of it is that if you need to tell somebody about a difference that you have because you need to get that job offer, and you know you're not going to be able to do that without their understanding, then you may as well tell them, because if they're not going to accept you for who you are, they're not the right place for you anyway. So it is a hard call, and I can understand people being in two minds. Authenticity is really important, and bringing your whole self. And if you're able to do that, then it generally is going to make your application better.
I was just going to add, I think completely agree with that authenticity piece. I think you have to be comfortable with the firm or chambers at a point of application. If you have doubt at that point, then it's not for you, because you know what might happen is you might apply there, get it, and actually it might just be awful, and you might have passed on opportunities that would have been much better for you. So I think, you know, don't go somewhere that doesn't feel right for you, where you can't be yourself. I recently did a talk at Sheffield University, and I think, you know, loads of students were asking, basically there was a question from one student who said, my family told me that I shouldn't say that I have a disability on my application, and I would always advise of it. I know it might not be a comfortable thing to do, but I would say do put that down, because you might take away an opportunity of additional support potentially at the point of application. So it's not only just when you get the job, but you know, different companies have different processes, and for me it was the extra time, for me it was the laptop, for me it was just you know, knowing that actually I've got my own room, I'm not going to be distracted, I can concentrate on answering everything. And I think if I didn't disclose that, then I would have just kind of suffered through it almost, and maybe the outcome wouldn't be the same as it was in terms of, you know, actually getting through it and being successful at it. Because I think if I had to handwrite something, made loads of mistakes, my handwriting was awful, and you know, and they said, oh sorry, you didn't get a training contract, and I would have said, oh by the way, I've got dyslexia, then it's kind of too late for them because they've already offered it to somebody else. It kind of sounds like I'm sort of just saying it after the fact, whereas I think, you know, don't, as much as you will feel, I don't know whether I want to say it, and it is up to you whether obviously you say it and you have to be okay with it, I would encourage you to definitely speak up about it, because you're taking away some support that you might have through the recruitment process.
Brilliant, thank you. I think Ben's got a question. I'm going to let Ben ask the final question from the floor, and then I've got a big question to hopefully finish and wrap this up. Ben, go for it.
Sorry, it's not a question. It's something I'd like to just add. I completely get where everybody's coming from with reasonable adjustments, because I'm autistic myself, and I did my degree in USW and I did the LPC with it, and I did my LPC with my degree. So I came out, and last year, because I was in my third year, I applied for a training contract in the Welsh Assembly in Cardiff, and I put on my application form that I am autistic, because I put it on all the application forms, because I feel is my biggest strength and is something that I can offer to the firms, because I feel that there isn't that much diversity for people. And when I was lucky enough to get through to the interview stage, and when I got through to the interview stage, I had a phone call off them, and they said, what reasonable adjustments can we put in place for you? So I said, could I have an earlier slot in the day, because that's when I feel better and I'm more comfortable. I might need a bit of extra time because of my autism and things like that. And I got to say to them, they were really helpful. They allowed me extra time, and they were very understanding and very helpful. But it needs to be and it's something that we need to work on.
Thank you very much, Ben, for that. No, I think we all agree. I think it's one of the reasons why, certainly from my perspective, I'm very grateful for Alastair and Daryna's support in everything they've done for us as an organisation. And it's kind of, to be quite frank, why we're here as an organisation. It's why we were founded, sort of as I think Daryna mentioned before, to be a voice, because, and it sort of stems into my final question of the event, because I'm wary of time and I don't want to keep you all here into your late Saturday evenings. I hope you can have some fun in this final few days of lockdown. But there's something that I think we bring to the legal profession. I think that we should celebrate that. I think we have a unique element, and we have a way of looking at things that can be very useful to firms, to barristers, and to the wider world. And to bring me to my question, sort of round us up, I rather cheesily said in the interview I did for Susanna, and it's a quote that if you go on the website and find my interview is sort of taken, diversity of thoughts has led to great innovation and creativity throughout human history. Neurodivergence is part of that history. And my question to Daryna and Alastair, to wrap us up, is this: why do you think neurodivergent representation is important in the legal sector?
So I think for me, so working at a firm that is kind of, we've got personal services, we've got business services. At the end of the day, we work with clients who are also humans, who will be neurodivergent as well. And I think, they do like to see their authenticity, and also they do like to be able to have a variety of different skills. So, being neurodiverse brings skills with it that I think clients can really benefit from. I've mentioned previously, seeing the big picture, linking, different elements of the case together, strategy. That kind of, the clients want that. They want options of how they can proceed, and looking at their circumstances, which won't necessarily fit exactly what was in the book, for example. So it won't be exactly how, another case was. And you have to really think of the personal circumstances and what is right for them, and give them options. And I think, the more diverse we are in general as a legal kind of services, the better it is for kind of access to justice as well, and for people to be understood, and for us to be able to deliver a really good kind of service to clients, because we are humans, the clients are humans, and if we can kind of provide some of the skills we have to them, then I think it's only a benefit. And that's kind of what I found quite, I think one of the things as a dyslexic is, there's maybe I feel like I can kind of be empathetic with people, and some of the work I did on the personal legal services, it was a serious injury, medical negligence, family law, and and a lot of the times these individuals are going through tough times, and kind of my almost scale of kind of being able to understand maybe a little bit of what they're saying to me and the emotions and how to deal with that was a benefit. So I think if we can kind of improve our diversity in legal services, that can only benefit clients, even more.
I would echo that, and I'd say that the one thing that we all probably have in common whether we're dyslexic, dyspraxic, autistic, is problem solving. Essentially, that's what a lawyer is. We are there to solve people's problems. And this is, when you've done enough pupillage interviews like I have, and you know, why do you want to be a barrister? For God's sake, why did we always ask that question? But we always did, and we always got the trite answers. But we'd ask, give us an example of when you've had a problem which you've been able to overcome. Bang, okay, we've all done it, okay? We are all problem solvers. That's what we are, okay? And that's what lawyers are. And we just have to sell ourselves better to a certain extent. And yeah, that's what we do every day. That we have something, for one reason or another, there's something that doesn't quite work in our brain or that makes us think in a different way. And we overcome that every single day, and we come up with problems, we come up with solutions for these issues. You know, we should be screaming this. People should be giving us jobs effectively, because we are that good. You know, we have that skill, and that's why I'm saying we shouldn't be ashamed of it. That, you know, going back to me when I was an 8-year-old and I'm crying because I'm getting 9 out of 20 in a spelling test. You deal with that. You get harder. Okay, you become stronger. You become determined. Okay, and you solve the issues that you have. These are everything that what a good lawyer is. Okay, that you can empathize, that you can solve problems, that you can put yourself forward. This is what we do. For just because of who we are, and we don't. As I say, we don't sell ourselves well enough.
Brilliant.
So,
Sorry, go on.
I say, and that's what I do. When we have these, I was terrible. Okay, and I'm glad that I didn't interview any of you for pupillage, but I used to sit there. I used to get bored. So during the 2012 Olympics, we had our set questions, and then I'd start asking questions that weren't on our set questions. I'd say, is dressage a sport? You should have seen the shock, the absolute fear on the face of these wannabe barristers when you ask them a question. What the hell? I want to be a family barrister, and this guy's asking me about dressage. What the hell is dressage? Okay, I'm doing that. Because it shows I want to know that the biggest sporting event in the world is taking place in your doorstep, and I want to know that if you're talking to people and and things along those lines. But yeah, would that have fazed me as a dyslexic? No, not at all, because it'd be bang, that's a problem. I overcome it. Okay. Some of these people who don't have our problems, who've never had a difficult time, never have cried because they got 7 out of 20, they've got 3 A's at A level, they've got a first-class degree, they went to Oxford or Cambridge. Okay, they crack under pressure. We don't. And we need to be better at that. We need to sell ourselves better.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Daryna. Thank you so much, Alastair, for those incredible answers that I will take verbatim for my pupillage application in years to come. That was absolutely fantastic. Given the time, I'm very sadly going to have to draw this event to a close. Again, thank you both so much for giving your time. It's hugely appreciated by the whole of Indian law, and I'm sure it's greatly appreciated by our guests here today. I want to just personally give my thanks to our events coordinator, Susanna, for putting this event together, to our wonderful media team, of which Sophie heads up, for their consistent support and their wonderful work on our social media, and to the whole team for everything they do. Just to give you a heads up of what is coming in the next few weeks, we've got a lot on. I was looking through our calendar and it's a bit scary. On the 8th of December, we have a training contract clinic for wannabe solicitors. On the 15th of December, we have a pupillage clinic where we've got I believe we've got QCs and current barristers coming to that. We also have a joint event with Themis regarding neurodiversity and intersectionality on the 17th of December. And we have another coffee talk on the 19th of December at 5 p.m. With a US attorney called Danielle Lindau, which we are very excited for. So as you can see, December and lockdown is not stopping us from putting on events. We keep going no matter what. But I want to say thank you very much to you all for being here, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your Saturday evening, and hope to see you at events soon.